All right. Happy Thursday, everyone. Welcome to April's first CED Office Hour Live. I am Crystal Duckett, the Southern Regional Extension Associate, and I will be the moderator for the month of April. And so to kick off the CED Office Hour Live today, we just want to welcome everyone who is viewing and watching with us. Of course, as you know, the goal is for CED is to engage Ohio residents, professionals, and businesses on all things CED. We always encourage everyone to ask questions, get involved in the chat, and just feel free to drop anything in the comments that is on your mind. We, of course, as you know, have Ms. Amber Twitty, Mr. Ambrose Moses, and Mr. Eric Smith. This month, today, we are going to give everyone a brief overview or a reintroduction of what CED is and stands for. So if you all don't mind, can you all just go around and introduce yourselves, please?
Hello, everyone. My name is Amber Twitty. I am based in the Southern region along with Crystal Duckett. She is my Regional Extension Associate, which encompasses mainly Hamilton County, Butler County, and all the counties going eastward over to Lawrence and Scioto County, which is the greater Portsmouth area, and everything in between. However, like Eric and Ambrose, we work throughout the whole state. That's just kind of my home plate where I start out at.
Thank you, Amber.
Good afternoon. I'm Ambrose Moses, Extension Educator within CED, and my primary territory is really just statewide, dealing with community and economic development, and primarily in terms of business formation, business planning, those types of topics, as well as disaster management for small businesses as well.
And hi, my name is Eric Smith, CED Extension Educator primarily for Northwest Ohio, which is a 22 county region from the Indiana border and Van Wert County over to Richland County, which is Mansfield, and then on up to the lake. In our region, we focus on 4 key areas, and that's first, assisting small scale farmers. Second, we assist small businesses of all variety. And then third, we build resilient communities. And finally, fourth, we engage and catalyze personal and professional development. And that's where our workforce efforts come in. And so we're here to serve our region, communities in our region, and of course across Ohio.
And I forgot to say some of our areas. I work in both of those areas in the and also in addition to the business development and working with small businesses, especially in newly formed businesses, work a lot in the reentry space, especially with record sealing clinics, entrepreneurship, as well as professional and personal development spaces.
Thank you so much, everyone. CED is so rich in information and these wonderful subject matter experts. So we're going to dive on into the first question that I'm sure anyone that's watching wants to know. What is CED?
So community and economic development is really a system, right? It touches on everything like diversity. It's this big thing that touches on how we live, how we work, and how we play. So on one end, it's dealing with the infrastructure. So that's your buildings, your highways, how you navigate through these spaces, the public spaces, private spaces, your housing, right? Businesses, your buildings that you work in. The other opposite end of that is the human development, human capital development. So that's workforce development. You hear summer youth employment programming for veterans and hard to serve populations, career pathing, all those kind of things. And then what I call the connector. The connector are the organizations, the businesses that connect the infrastructure with the people and make that a whole system. So what we do as CED professionals is we look at that entire system and look at how we can process improvement within that system. So whether we're working with individuals, whether we're working with businesses to help them grow and expand, or we're working with communities so that their communities are stronger and more resilient. So we are process improvement, systems improvement professionals on how we live, work, and play.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Amber. CED is a real boots on the ground kind of
Yes.
program area. So my next question is, how does CED fit into the extension model?
I'll take that question. I really like this opportunity when we get to explain and share with the public about extension, about the land grant nature of Central State University, because I think that it's helpful for the public to know more about it, and then ultimately to then see us as a resource and interact with us in that way. So as a land grant institution, there are three primary functions: the research, teaching, and extension. And research and teaching, most people know and expect about a college or university, things that happen on campus. Extension is that unique aspect of the land grant system and the land grant institutions, where the institution sends staff out across the state to provide services, educational services, to the residents to help improve their lives, which you can tell from the various descriptions that myself and my colleagues have given in terms of what we do. So CED fits into that model, that aspect of extension, in terms of going out into the community at the county level and providing those educational services. And then the specifics that each of us have described is sort of the mode that we connect to the university. But it's really that educational part, going out, meeting people where they are, engaging with the communities where they are, and taking these educational solutions out there to them.
And I like to piggyback on that as well, because one of, I think, our ability is that we listen to the community. A lot of times traditional models where you go out and you tell the community, this is what is good for you, whether that's what's good for them or not, and this is what we're going to do. We flip the script. We say, these are some of the things that we've done. However, that's just to give you an idea of what we've done, right? It's not to say that's what we're going to do for you. It's now that you get a feel of the kind of things that we can do and have done, what are the things that you need and what are some of the things you want? And now let's work together to develop something specifically for you and your community. So it's a lot of listening, a lot of sharing, and then it's working together. So it's a very collaborative model or approach that we use to have a goal. And what that turns into is lasting relationships, it's true partnerships, right? And even when we're in a different role 10, 20 years down the line, the things that we've put in place still exist, it still moves, it still grows, because we put that foundation in place. And another thing is that we train the trainers, right? So especially with Eric's movement in the resilient communities model, it's that train the trainer. So it's not, we're creating we're kind of working ourselves out of a job in a way, right? Because we're training them on how to be resilient, how to measure themselves, how to grow, how to ask for things, right? Where are some of those resources? So we're moving for those individuals or groups or communities or businesses to be self-sufficient.
It's like teaching a community how to fish, right? You won't need to always provide the fish, because you are now providing them the skill set that they need to be self-sufficient, which in itself is a huge asset for any community. So thank you. The next question I have is,
well, let me add real quick, just to continue that fishing analogy, right? We're used to that phrase, it's not just giving the fish, it's teaching to fish. But going back to what Amber was saying previously, right? You also have to have access to the pond, right? You have to have the equipment to fish. You have to have, so community economic development and our role in extension is to be thinking about all those other pieces in addition to the teaching to fish. We're just thinking the people are naturally attracted to community development are people who are big picture people who see the different dots and how they can play together and connect with each other to create something that's sustainable and lasting.
And measurable.
And I guess I would just want to sort of highlight once again in terms of what Eric has shared, Amber has shared, is that responsibility of the community to make that request upon us. So I really want to sort of drive that home. Contact us, the extension educators, and really anyone within extension that you know, but we are sort of that front line. Contact us, make those requests, make those demands, ask those questions. You have to, and if you want to learn how to fish, you're going to have to ask someone to teach you, or ask them for the fishing line or the fishing pole, whatever it is that you need, you're going to have to make some requests for that. So I know it's like beating a dead horse, but it's really important that the community also takes that responsibility to seek that engagement and make those requests upon us.
It makes it that ask not, want not. If you don't ask, that means you don't want it, right?
Can you all hear me at all?
Yes, we hear you fine.
Thank you so much. All right, sorry about that. I had some technical difficulties. My camera went out, but we're moving right along. I wanted to say that, so it's very important for the CED team to be broad and long-lasting in your mindset in regards to how you think about and how you look at the community and how you look at the programs that you offer, instead of just, like you said, cookie cutter, this is what the community needs. You're listening, and listening is a very, very important skill set to have when you work with the community, because they will voice their needs if you listen. So thank you. How does the CED team work together as your backgrounds are so diverse, and how are programs created by CED, by the team?
Great question. I'll field that one if that's all right.
Okay.
Or well, start off with. Well, I think I would say a couple of things on that point. First of all, as far as the team, as you getting to know us here in this session, I think it's important to understand the depth of the bench that's represented here. Between us, educators in the CED team, there's 6-7 decades worth of experience in doing community work, doing economic development work. I think that's a really great thing, and it's not, but in addition, it's the diversity of that experience. So whatever community brings to us, we probably have touched something that's connected to that. Whether it's a small business that wants to get certified as a woman-owned business, or whether the community wants to build the resource ecosystem to support their entrepreneurs. At all levels, we've got something to contribute. Or it could be you're thinking about you're a smallholder farmer and you want to improve your operation, all the way to building co-ops to meet the local demand for local food. This team can provide support at all levels of that body of work. Or it could be, like Amber is saying, infrastructure, right? Or it could be how do we get the capital to do that downtown development project? Well, our team can provide assistance with that as well. So it's the amount of experience and the diversity of experience, I think, combined to make us a really strong team. And I think it's important to note that because we are community developers, all of us, we do practice what we preach. And that means that we believe in that principle in community development that something is going to last if it has a lot of fingerprints on it, right? And so we workshop everything together because we know that whatever we produce as a team will be stronger because we're all bringing our different perspectives, our different backgrounds, our different educational experiences, trainings. But that unique aspect with each of us bringing something to the project, we know it's going to be stronger in the end. And the last point I would make is because we're all community developers, we are methodical, we are process oriented. And so we do think things through from the beginning to the end very carefully. And so that does, and it does start, as Ambrose was saying, it really is about first, is turning this on its head, right? It's starting first by listening. And that's so important to us. And then we take what people are telling us are the felt needs of that community, of that area, that business, whatever. Then again, we're processing that with bringing it into it, our experience, our training, our education, and then sort of processing that request together. And moving it from, well, what are the impacts we're looking for? And then what are the things that will bring about that impact? And it's based on that we start to develop the nuts and bolts of a program. But it starts with listening and analyzing what does the research tell us, what does our experience tell us is going to be the most impactful in that situation, the most impactful response. And then we build the programming after that. So a couple of things, I'm sure Amber and Ambrose have more to say, but those are a couple of things that come to my mind.
Yeah, and one thing I like to add is it's the innovation piece because we are so diverse in our backgrounds, and we're used to looking at things with different eyes, right? It's not just one way to look at things. So we look at things even within ourselves, not just Ambrose's way, not just Eric's way, not just Amber's way. I'm looking at it at 5 different angles. Eric is looking at 5 different angles. Ambrose is looking at 5 different angles, right? And then we'll say, I had this experience over here in a totally different industry. Can we apply that over here? So then something innovative always comes out of that, right? Now we're applying a new process to an existing industry, right? So we're very innovative in the way that we even process or come up with something practical. And we always make sure that before we introduce anything, that it does have a practical application, right? Because we want it to be able to be duplicated. Like I said, it's for, in the consulting world, and we are consultants. We come in with a practical application. We're teaching, we're guiding, we're facilitating, we're coaching. But when we leave onto another project, it has to be, what we left has to be able to be duplicated by the people that we taught. So it has to have a practical application. It has to be able to be replicated. And we want them to be in a place, whoever we work with, to be able to teach another community person. So that's the sustainability piece. And that's very important to us as well.
One thing that, and you'll probably gather that from my different explanations, I'd like for individuals I work with, be it folks in the community that we're serving or even clients when I'm doing my things in private practice, to understand the system, to understand more about that process. And so with respect to the things that we're saying about extension, there is also an approach that's called integrated, that in terms of the land grant function, that integrates the research with extension as well. So we are, as extension, we're the front line. So we're going out engaging with the community. And then as we do that engagement, we identify issues that are communicated to us or that we observe, and then we bring that back. So as part of the solution that we're going to provide, or suggestions, even, we're going to communicate internally with research. And so those members of the university who engage in research that supports our work, then they go research, provide that information to us. Then we develop programs and solutions that we'll take back out to the community. So there is some additional integrated activity between research and extension that happens as well. But that's why, again, it goes back to learning, engaging with the community, and learning from them what their needs, what their desires are. And just a final point, there was recently in the Columbus area, there were some community activists. These are some men and women who were, pretty seasoned. They've been around for a while, and they were approaching the government and local government officials about some of the economic development that was going on. And one of the things that they highlighted is that they wanted to have solutions that come out of these meetings that respond to what the community is asking for, what the community is communicating to them and asking for. They didn't want, and they were express about it, they did not want government officials and others just dictating to them what the solution should be. They wanted to be heard. They wanted the things that they were asking for to be responded to be given or facilitated for them. So this aspect of the community participating, the community, their needs and desires being met, is very, very important. And I think it's good that we have more folks who are articulating that point. And we here at Central State, or at least we're open and receptive to that.
And then another thing I like to add too is within Extension, there are 3 other teams, right? So you have the Family and Consumer Sciences, you have Agriculture and Natural Resources, and you have the 4-H and Youth Development team, right? And those are teams. I'm not new to CED. I've been in CED for over 30 years, but I am new to Extension and Agriculture. I've only been in it for a year and a half now. And in learning those teams, one of our challenges is that traditionally, Extension has been more of a hierarchical structure, whereas we have all come from a cross-functional structure. So we have treated the other teams as internal customers. So over these years, we've been learning what they do. So when we're out in the community, we're also really kind of pitching what they do and seeing how we can integrate some of the things that they do even into the solutions that we come up with that are CED based. So we're kind of shifting gradually from a hierarchical structure to a cross-functional structure organically. So that is another innovation, even in the process, even within our organization.
That's awesome. So CED seems like it should be in every community.
It is.
No, I mean just all around the world. I mean,
Yeah.
not just Ohio, because I can see value in it for what it's worth here and also in other places. So this is incredible. Thank you. So the next question that I have are, what are some of the misconceptions about CED in the community or in general? And I'll ask the second part is, how can we overcome them?
One of the misconceptions, I think, is simply there's not one standard definition, not even from the federal government level. CED has kind of one kind of general concept when it's under USDA, but if you go in Health and Human Services, it's slightly different. If you go in the Department of Commerce, it's slightly different. Generally speaking, it's the same, but there are different nuances based on the industry. So there's not one standard definition. So that leads to interpretations differently. And even within Extension, and I'll let Ambrose, he explains that much better. There are different ways that the different extension universities that are have extension designations even treat community and economic development. So there are even challenges within the extension world. But I think that is one of the challenges, is that like diversity is so vast, people have different kind of taking different stabs at what CED is. And no one has just said this is the standard baseline CED definition. But I'll let Ambrose explain how that affects within extension, because he studied that.
Well, I guess in terms of here at Central State, our CED, Community and Economic Development, we use that description, community and economic development. There are other universities, their program areas described as community development, and then there's another sector that refers to themselves as CRD, community resource development. So I think that when you look at those descriptions, those titles, you can see just from that there are different focuses or concentrations within how they view that that general, what we call CED role. But for us, community development is important, but equally economic development is important. So the relationships within community development, the relationships, the different communication issues that are going on within the community, even some of the policy or engaging with their elected representatives, or just any challenge that a community is facing falls within community development, and we are helpful or looking to help in that area. We have GED, a GED program, GED HSC program for folks who need to complete that.
Can you define HSC?
Oh.
Because people are familiar with GED, but they might not know the new term HSC.
Yeah, HSC, because I had to learn that as well. High school equivalency, which is one of the newer forms of GED. But we have a record ceiling, which is, a lot of folks refer to it as a record expungement, but individuals who may have a criminal record, and state law allows for those records to be sealed in certain circumstances, which can then create more opportunity for them to, gain employment or various other benefits and things of that nature. So those community development activities we think are important, and they fall within the umbrella of our approach. And then the economic development, in terms of working with small businesses, existing businesses, those things that help to create jobs, create businesses, create jobs, improve the income, household income. That economic development aspect, that falls within what we do. So we're not trying to just carve out one small niche and focus only there. And I think that is one of the things where us as a new land grant institution, we have that kind of flexibility. We don't have a long history of being on one small track. So, but again, this is where the community's engagement with us, since we're open to this broad range, bring it to us and let's see what can be worked out. So CED covers a lot.
So,
and when people say a lot, they're like, oh, wow, that's a lot. But when you look at, once again, it's a system. And what we're doing is seeing what part of that system we can plug and play and make a difference and have impact. It really isn't a lot. It's just comprehensive, right? It's a holistic approach. So I say, no, it's where we live, work, and play, right? It's plugging in.
I like that. Well, I do want to say thank you all. Just a general side note, because even though I do work with, each program area, especially since I'm Team CED, I definitely am learning so much just by speaking with you all in regards to this. So I just want to take my time out to say thank you and move forward. That CED is, as you mentioned, each program area measures impact differently. How does CED measure its program impact?
I'll take a stab at addressing this one, this question. I think that, a lot of times when we think about programming, the first thing people think about is, how many people showed up? How many did you get in your class? Or, and that is you might call that objective, but that doesn't really show you the full impact or effect of a particular program. That doesn't tell you anything about how it changed or influenced anyone's life. It doesn't tell you what they learned from attending. It doesn't tell you actually how many people you truly met, you truly impacted. So for what we do, it really, when we talk about measuring impact, it really is some of those small objective matters, but the more subjective in terms of individuals' increase in knowledge, in terms of helping to facilitate more relationships, that a community group or group of individuals, their relationship to one another. Because we may have some individuals who say, well, we want to do some agricultural activities in our community, and we want to do like this farm or something like that. And so our education, our training can help them to pull together those relationships among themselves and form a cooperative. So formalize that relationship. And so now we say, okay, well, now you have this cooperative, what can you do with it? So we help them form those relationships. Then it can help them in terms of the economic power that comes with that. So then we measure some of that impact. How many businesses were able to join together or to be created out of this, and which we may be able to count, but that may be sort of a long-term impact that you have to measure. So in terms of CED, we really look at some of the relationships. We look at some of the education that folks receive, that usable knowledge. So it's not just learning some terms and names of things. It's information. They get some of that, but how do they put it into action? So those are the kinds of impacts that we look to effect through CED. And then, but in terms of measuring that, then it's going to come from things such as interviews, such as testimonials, where the community expresses and tells you, what they did, what the information that was shared with them, how it impacted them and what they were able to do with it. So we don't just count, the number of individuals in the room. We really look at, what was that impact or what was that change that happened in these individuals' lives or in this group's lives.
So it's not just the short-term impact, it's also the mid-term, the long-term. And a lot of times that mid and long-term is harder to track because if you don't have that relationship, right? So it's very important, as Ambrose says, building that relationship early on and maintaining that relationship so that as those businesses grow or people grow, whatever their goal is, that they're coming back and telling us, hey, we're doing this now, right? I used to be a mortgage counselor, and just last week, and that was 20 years ago, someone came up to me, and I remember their faces, but I don't remember their names, right? Because that was 20 some years ago. But they remember me, and they were like, hey, Amber, because I helped them with their major dream of getting their first house. Well, with them, they wanted to get rental property. So they were telling me, I'm on my 4th rental property, right? And I'm on my 3rd house. And I'm doing all the things that we talked about. And thank you for planting that mustard seed, right? So it's also about us planting those seeds for them to continue to grow. And that's the true impact. So sometimes the old model was get the butts and seats, right? How many people came through your door? But in our world, it's what is the impact of them coming through the door? Did they move towards closer to whatever their goals were from the time they came through the door to the time they left? And what happened? Did they continue on that continuum even after they left over time. So that's the importance of those stories that we try to capture with that. Um, this past year, I got the opportunity to work with the Montgomery County Office of Reentry. They had a pitch contest with those who were ex-offenders, and these were people who were just interested in exploring entrepreneurship, and they formed a pitch for a business idea. Well, I got to be one of those technical assistance people helping them with their pitches, but I ended up motivating them as well, as long as with the lead facilitator. And what happened as far as impact, not only did they present their pitches, all of them got seed money because they did their pitches so well, but then they actually are full-fledged incorporated LLC businesses in Ohio. Now, when they started the process, they just wanted to participate in the program. They are currently, that was in November, they are currently thriving businesses, and now they're working on their growth plan. So that's an example of impact, right? And continued growth. And I still keep in touch with them. I still give them some tidbits. Here's something you can do now because you're at this point, and here's the next step, right? Here's the next goal. So that's an example of how we are impactful to people over time.
That's incredible. You have goal setting, relationship building, goal accomplishment, impact, it being long lasting. This is okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Eric.
Well, just to kind of say too, right? So the impact, those are great stories, and those stories, those. As I'm listening to Amber, right, they keep me motivated, right? I'm thinking, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about a farm I'm working with, and the farm, it's a nonprofit. The farm is just a piece of what they do as a benefit to the community, and but they doubled their revenue from that source over the past year because of the influence of ideas of ag and natural resources and myself working with them. So those are the kinds of impacts that are awesome. But I think we also, going back to what Amber said, right? So the long term, so that's the short term are there changes in behavior and attitude and behavior, knowledge. Then that medium term does that translate into, right, that individual business making those changes that are necessary for the next evolution. The person making a difference, a change, and keep it. We could talk about people that have come through our workforce readiness program and are still employed, and actually now they're the ones that they're investing in 401ks and retirement and other things. But then also, how does that then long term influence the whole system? So I'm thinking right now about the story of some incubator farmers in an urban context we're working with, some beginning farmers. And so what we're trying to do now is, and we've started to connect some of these farmers with actual local ethnic markets that are in need of local produce, or we prefer to sell produce locally. So we're creating this whole value chain, moving food from being grown locally to supplying the local store, so that our local Ohioans can buy local food from the local store, right? And so as you create those value chains and connect those across a regional economy, now everybody benefits. More health because it's more nutritious, because it hasn't come, from 1,000 miles away, which is our typical produce that we eat, travels 1,000 miles. So, and then it benefits the local business, it benefits the local farmer, and that creates an economic engine of itself, because that dollar is changing hands, multiple hands, right there in that community. And so it lifts everything up once you start to see the impact over the long term
of the system.
Yeah.
And I would want to sort of add to this, and sort of going back to your question, Crystal, about to Eric about the program, how a program's created, and then in terms of Amber making reference to planting seeds. Some of what we do, I think it relates to it involves the vision of the extension staff as well, the extension educator, being able to visualize a possible outcome and educating the community of this possibility. So even before you tell them what all the resources are, you know, sometimes you have to sort of plant the seed of that vision. You know, here's what's possible, what you can do, you know, to change your circumstances. Because one of the things that in some of the literature that comes out of DC in terms of the objectives to increase the number of farms, you know, in the state, you know, that's what they're looking for the land grant system to do. Well, you know, Central State as a land grant institution, we're an 1890 land grant. You know, so one of our missions, you know, they use the terms limited resource and disadvantaged, underrepresented. You know, I like to use the phrase Black folks. So in part, that's part of what we have to, the community we're trying to serve. So if we're talking about increasing the number of farms and the number of Black farmers in Ohio, just as an example, well, we in order for the farms to grow, most Black folks in Ohio live in urban areas, urban and suburban areas. You're gonna have less access to land to grow a farm. You can do some small farms, but to really start to do it at scale, you're gonna need more land. So there needs to be the idea of some of these successful urban farms may need to then expand into some of the more rural areas, you know, and take that as an idea and then build upon it. And then you can have folks from all different backgrounds, diverse backgrounds to support that. But we need to move some folks out so they can grow these farms. So I think just having that discussion and having it openly and in public is an important part of the impact. If we want to increase the number of farms, yeah, but we want to also increase the number of Black farms and larger Black farms. And I think that's supported when you look at the United States Census of Agriculture, which they do every certain number of years. For the state of Ohio, the number of Black farms is barely even registering, if it's registering at all, you know, in their count. So it is something that we need to plant that seed, and it is going to take some time, but that will be a major impact. And I think that CED is, you know, we play a role in that space because I think it's going to be more likely that we're going to engage with some of these urban ag producers, along with our partners, our colleagues in ag and natural resources. But CED is really the central component of that. And then working together within Extension, then we can help grow and get some of them to move out to these urban areas. And that's an impact, and it's going to be, once we get there, it's going to be major, but it's going to take some time. And along the way, I think there's impact, you know, to the point that Amber was making. There's impact that's occurring short term, mid term, and then long term, you know, with the creation of those farms.
I agree, and I think that just to kind of piggyback off what you said, Ambrose, I believe that the pandemic really sped things up and hit home for a lot of people when it came to farming and self-sufficiency. I think, like, you know, for most of us, our parents or our grandparents may have had like a little garden or spot in their backyard, or at least a tomato plant, you know, where they were growing their fruits and vegetables. And understanding how the pandemic really changed and affected the supply chain may have really kind of fast forwarded a lot of these initiatives to where I know in Cincinnati and the urban market. And Amber, you can probably piggyback off of that too, with like Green Cincinnati and the housing initiative, where they are letting individuals who live in the city of Cincinnati and have a valid license, they're giving them the opportunity to farm those little plots of land where homes were dilapidated and taken down. And then there are grants that are coming up because they're seeing this could possibly blossom into something a lot bigger as far as feeding the community or just feeding a few people. So now they are starting to have grants where you can apply and then they'll give you the money for the supplies. So just having something small, then you can have grants for hoop houses. So there are so many small pockets, and that's where I think CED has this beautiful mix between agriculture and these unprecedented events like a pandemic, right? Where you're able to meet those needs as they come because you all are so forward thinking and you don't just look at it from one perspective, and you are able to bring all of your ideas together as a team and think short, medium, long-term goals, and you are able to meet the people and the community where they are. So that is awesome.
And I think one of the things that is important just with our role in general is not only building relationships, but is connecting. So what you were just talking about is, are we the agriculture experts? No, but we see the opportunity, the system again.
Right.
That word, the system, and it's like, well, we know that we need to increase farms. We know that there's an initiative to increase Black farmers. Now, but we know that in Ohio, most of the Black folks live in the urban area. So let's come up with an initiative or a strategy to encourage more Black people to buy land in the rural areas to increase the farms and connect them to the ag people so they can show them how to do the technical side. But we're looking at the business incentive to get them there, right? So we're connecting them to the agriculture. We're connecting them to the resources, having access to the resources to get there, but we're coming up with this strategy. So we're also not only building relationships, but we're connecting them to resources and connecting them to the people to make it happen.
And helping them write business plans too, right? So you will help.
Ambrose has the 4-page business plan. So I'm creating another program, and that's part of my program. I was like, Ambrose, I'm using that in my other program.
Well, yeah, I actually did the class 4-page business plan yesterday, and one of the participants, one of the attendees, she works with the city of Columbus, but her background, she has like an MBA or business administration, and she had these business planning classes, and it seemed like my 4-page plan passed the review, so I felt like I was being tested. But the whole idea, and she thought it was very good from the standpoint of being able to break this information down into a very basic concept, basic chunks that folks could then use as they get towards the part of doing the more detailed business plan that you hear at a lot of organizations. So I felt good that I passed that test yesterday.
Nice.
Yeah.
And that's impact.
Yeah, and it's taken something this big giant thing, right, that usually intimidates people, and it's putting it into a process. Remember, process improvement, where they have the basics and then just keep adding more detail, and the next thing they look up, they have that big detailed plan, and they can sell it, they understand it, and they bought into it. So I think it's a very good process. So kudos to you, Ambrose.
Yeah, congratulations. That's awesome for sure. Let's see. Do I have any more questions? CED is all about community, as we have learned in these glorious 48 minutes that have passed. So my question to all of you would be, what are some untouched areas that you and your team would like to serve in and have a greater impact?
Who wants to go first?
Let Eric go first.
Well, there's a lot that I'd love to tackle. But let me say one thing. I've worked in Africa, in Uganda and Congo. I've worked in Central Appalachia. I've worked in urban neighborhoods and revitalization. So those are all such different contexts, but there's one thing that's always been true in my experience. And that's this. There's sort of, where there's a colonial imprint, there's kind of a lack of ownership that that happens of the assets in the region or the neighborhood or the and so I just think community wealth building needs to be part of our conversation. So just as an example, you know, we've got a lot of technologies we can use nowadays, social technologies, or ways of organizing things. So a community can create a land trust. So it's not just the developer that owns the properties, but you can actually, as a community, own your own land, your own property, and decide how it's best used for the sake of your family, your community. But there's a lot of technologies like that or methods we have nowadays to increase local ownership of housing property and the finances of the neighborhood or the rural community. And so I think we need to keep pushing on that. To me, you know, when we talk about what's the impact down the road that really matters, and that to me it's increased ownership. So that can mean increased ownership of businesses, increased ownership of houses, increased ownership of property, you know, financial resources. But I just think we need to keep pushing ownership as the end goal in my mind. And so that suite of opportunities for communities is something I want to explore more.
Thank you, Eric.
For me, it's housing. Housing was one of the areas that when I first really got into community economic development, affordable housing, um, with the current level of inflation, the pandemic, among other things, housing, whether it's rental housing or um, ownership, has just gone through the roof. So I would say affordable housing. I would like to do, when I was the mortgage counselor, doing a home buyers education club. So it's taking a home buyer education class and extending it out over a year so people have more time to save. And last time that I did that, we had a grant called IDA grant, where that was a federal grant where they matched like a 2 to 1. So for every dollar you had, you got $2 matched for your savings, but you had to have a goal. And that goal in this case would be for, to go towards your housing expense. But other people for other programs might have did like for a car or a college or things like that. But they had a specific things limit. They couldn't just do anything, but they had specific, life-changing things that they saved for. Um, so that it'd make it more affordable. And their financing was a lot more solid when they made that life-changing purchase. So I would like to do something like that. I know we can't do it right now, but that is something that I would like to aspire to do.
That's awesome. Thank you, Amber.
My area that I would like to see us uh, delve into more relates to the technology in terms of, in particular, in terms of the utilization of the blockchain technology and decentralization as a way to provide more access to markets for small businesses and small farms and urban producers. It's one of those areas that I think is the a current wave, and we want our communities that we serve, I think, to take as much advantage of it and to benefit from it as much as we can. And so that's one area I would like to see us get into. I've been sort of building, testing part of a project in that space, but it's like a major learning curve, not only in the community, but also within different organizations, such as, even such as ours. But that's one of the challenges I think that within CED that we try to address in terms of providing education, planting those seeds, again, back to what Amber has said, to try and get people thinking, about these different topics and how it's relevant, and get them thinking enough to put some focus in it, because one thing that we all are hit with today is like this information overload. So part of our challenge, not just within CED, but within extension in general, is breaking through all this information that people are receiving, you know, how we try to deliver our content, helpful content to them. And again, I think that's going to also involve effective use of technology. So, social use of technology.
Correct. Just to kind of piggyback off what you said, Ambrose, I think you're right. There's so much chatter and buzz in regards to blockchain and NFTs and crypto right now that it would be awesome for us to partner with, you know, if it's any one particular organization that might be able to train those in the community, because this particular sector of technology can really break up some of that lack of access to wealth in a lot of the communities that we live in and that we serve. So that's awesome. And to give everyone their just due, Amber, I think that is absolutely incredible in regards to housing, because that is a huge goal, right? Like, people do need to have not only just that idea in their head, but to see something so stabilizing, because home ownership is stabilizing. It gives you a sense of self and, of course, of community, but it also gives you a sense of, I did that. I worked hard, no matter where you work, but pride in that ownership. So it gives you and your children, you put generational sustainability and pride and some roots.
Legacy building.
Yes, thank you. You know where I was headed. I was fishing. But yes, legacy building, and that is very important to start that, or to maybe start it again. Maybe this is a gap in some generations and families where grandma had a house and then they sold it because the family went on hard times, and now it's time to start it over again with a new family. So that's beautiful. And Eric, like you said, increased ownership, even if it's not housing, right? If it's a business, just to be able to build that self-sustainability of ownership of something, even if it's not you, like you said, the community. I had no idea that communities could own homes or the land and have that kind of stake. So my question that I have is, would an HOA be considered a vested interest in something like that? Would they own that community and have interest, or is that something totally different? I have no idea.
That's something totally different.
Okay.
The HOA is really almost like an agreement to keep that property up. It's like a maintenance agreement, and they're pooling their money so that not one owner is taking the brunt. They're kind of spreading the wealth of keeping that common property up. And since there is one roof over several properties, they're spreading out that, or if they want the property to look a certain way, they're cutting grass across, all of their lawns instead of just one lawn being cut. So that's more equivalent to like a maintenance agreement. Because they still own their own property, their own section of that house.
However, historically, there have been HOAs have been used to exclude people from acquiring the wealth, or ownership that we're talking about. That what some people, where they have restrictive covenants where you could not sell your house to a Black person. So HOAs, that is something to be to understand, in this context. But again, to the point that you're making, Crystal, and and referencing what Eric had mentioned about land trust. Again, it's educating the community about possibilities. And yes, there are a lot of tools available. So the land trust is one of those. So yeah, you all could own this land. There's a vehicle for you to own this land, or to have some control over this land and what's done with it, and in such a way that it won't be taken away from you even after 25 years. It's still going to be dedicated to this purpose that you set it up for. So yeah, but education it starts with.
Yeah. So what does it look like if that house that Amber is trading, the houses that those people in the clubs are walking through and buying. So they're increasing family ownership. But what if that was built with a co-op of businesses, Black and minority owned businesses or whatever? But, I mean, you can see how, again, the system could be molded to create ownership across the board. And I think that's where we'll see sort of like, equity at its best coming forward, I think, and a better life for all.
Absolutely. Well, we have reached our glorious 3 o'clock hour. It seems like we've only been talking for a few minutes. I love this. I love this so much. Thank you all, Amber, Ambrose, and Eric, for your time. I'm just going to check the chat really quick to make sure that there are no questions that we have missed. I don't see any questions, but thank you all for taking the time out to allow me to moderate this. I definitely have learned a lot, and I think everyone that has and will watch this will also learn a lot. In the event that someone is watching this and wants to contact you all, they want to get involved, they want to understand how CED can possibly be able to bridge some of those gaps and fill those needs in the community that we spoke on today, what is a good way for them to reach out to you all?
The best way is by email. Technology makes the world flat, and I can be reached at atwitty@centralstate.edu. That's atwitty@centralstate.edu.
Thank you.
And my email address is amoses, AMOSES, @centralstate.edu.
And mine is esmith, number 2, @centralstate.edu. esmith2 @centralstate.edu.
Thank you so much, you all, and I appreciate you. Thank you for taking this time out with me, and until next week, where I will be interviewing Mr. Eric Smith and getting all of his information about his glorious background and what brought him full circle to CED. We'll see you next week.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you, Crystal.
Bye.
Bye.